Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff, man, he had just an awful Pac-12 Media Day. I'm Mundo, Heartland College Sports. It's great to be here with you. For those of you watching on YouTube, yes, we're coming from a remote location another week. By the way, we'll be back in the studio next week, just getting some time off, spending it with family. So if you're watching on YouTube, just know that we are so committed to you and committed to the show that, yes, we are remote for this week, but don't read anything into that. I promise you. That being said, I had to hop on here this weekend because it was a disastrous media day for Pac-12 fans, for Pac-12 teams, for the entire conference. George Kliavkoff has got to be one of the worst commissioners that college sports has ever seen. And I'm sure he's a very nice man. It's not a personal attack. It's just to continue to reiterate that he's playing checkers while those around him, especially Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark, playing chess. You go into Pac-12 Media Day, and all the reports were about how the Pac-12 was set to announce that it was going to have this new media rights deal, and it was going to be a great time to roll it out, and everybody in the league was going to be excited. And everybody was going to prove the Big 12 and the naysayers and the haters wrong, that the Pac-12 was fine. The Pac-12 was a cohesive unit, and the Pac-12 was going to survive with its 10 teams. Well, what happens? We find out this past week that the Pac-12 does not have a new media rights deal. And in fact, the commissioner does not want to talk about TV deals, media rights, or anything like that. So Kliavkoff, at Pac-12 Media Day this past week, here was a question from one of the media members. The question was as follows. It's a very simple question. You just said you're not announcing a deal today on purpose because you want the attention to be on football. That was the question to George Kliavkoff. He says, yep. Then the same person asks the commissioner of the Pac-12, to be clear, that would imply that the deal is done and codified, and you're just waiting until after today. Kliavkoff goes, I think you're reading too much into that. So then the same reporter, good job, asks, so then what is the purpose behind not announcing something, which is what you just said? And Kliavkoff goes, we want to have the focus on football today. We have an incredibly good football story to tell. We want that to be the focus today. Well, guess what was not the focus at Pac-12 Media Day? The football, because of the commissioner. The commissioner of the league does not know how to do PR, or he's got bad PR people around him who don't actually know media. If you don't have a deal and you don't want to really talk about it, just come out and say, we're still working on some details. As soon as we got something, we'll let you know. But trying to basically insult the reporters in the room and insult the fan base and the entire college football world by being like, we want the focus today to be on football. So that's why we're not announcing a deal today. No, you're not announcing a deal because you don't have one. That's why you're not announcing a deal. I mean, it's just like, don't BS us. Don't BS common sense people that are watching this unfold, that are following the Pac-12 and following the Big 12 and following all of college football, and tell them that it's raining when the dog is really pissing on their leg, because that's exactly what George Kliavkoff has done. And that's why I had to get on here from a remote location and do this show with you right now, because I just couldn't watch this guy BS his way through this conversation. I just couldn't do it this past week. I mean, it was unbelievable. So here's some of the other great quotes, and I say that very much tongue-in-cheek, from the Pac-12 commissioner. He was asked about the Big 12 poaching Pac-12 schools. Of course, the rumors are aplenty that Colorado and then maybe Arizona, those two are getting the most attention, could be headed to the Big 12 one day. Well, he says it's not a concern. That was the quote from George Kliavkoff. He goes on to say, quote, the truth is we have bigger fish to fry. There are incredible opportunities and also challenges in front of college athletics. I need to be able to work with all of my colleagues in Division I and particularly in the A5. We'll do that and move past kind of all the bitter squabbling of the last year and work together to make college athletics better. That sounds like a guy who wants to sing Kumbaya as people are trying to rip out his throat. That's what Kliavkoff is talking like. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, dude, how about you get a media deal? How about you expand 2 teams? You already host San Diego State. You put them in a bad spot where they act like they're leaving the Mountain West, and then they have to go back to the Mountain West with their tail between their legs in a very pathetic and embarrassing manner, because my guess is some backdoor promises were made that certain leagues, i.e. the Pac-12, could not keep. They could not cash those checks. Heck, I mean, just expand at this point, right? Get SMU, get San Diego State, do something. Do something. And this guy, I mean, he's like shifting deck chairs on the Titanic. That's what George Kliavkoff is doing. George Kliavkoff is the captain of the Titanic while it's sinking, and he's wondering if the shrimp is still on ice. That's what this guy is doing. It's like, dude, worry about the things that matter. You're like, well, there's a lot of challenges in front of college athletics. Yeah, there are. We know that. Transfer portal, NIL, we get all that. But you don't understand. Your league will cease to exist in the next few months, or certainly, I guess, the next year or two, unless you figure out the short term. And the short term is all about getting yourself a media rights deal and trying to add, ideally, a couple more teams. And he's worried about all these other things, so he says, that have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with what actually is going on. That's why it makes no sense how George Kliavkoff addressed this press conference. I can't believe they had weeks to prepare this guy for this thing, and that's the best they can do. Who's that goober on Twitter who's always making a lot of noise? Tony Altamore or something like that? That guy's too busy fighting with random Big 12 trolls with 3 followers that he doesn't prepare his own commissioner for a press conference like this where he looks like an absolute fool. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. So how about another gem from George Kliavkoff? This was one of his other quotes here about his TV deal. Kliavkoff said at Pac-12 Media Day, "We're on track to announce our deals at about the same time everyone would have anticipated and predicted before a conference realignment. Patience will be rewarded," he said. Now, this is coming from the same commissioner that opened up negotiations early, over a year ago, and thought he would have a deal done months ago. Yet here he is. He said, "I'll tell you what we've seen is the longer we wait for the media deal, the better our options get. And I think our board realizes that. There's an underlying shift in the media that is happening. And we're long-term taking advantage of that, but short-term, it may provide some hiccups." I don't know what that means, but let me interpret what I think it means. Since Kliavkoff doesn't want to be direct with the reporters, doesn't want to be direct with you, here's my interpretation of that. How can I spin the fact that we don't have a deal to make it look good for me and make it look good for us and make it look good for this league? That's how I read into what Kliavkoff is doing here. He doesn't have a deal. Time is not his friend in all this. Time is only going to force one of these teams, most likely Colorado, to make a move. Time is not on his side, because at some point a team is going to say, enough, I'm out. You don't have a deal. And if you do have a deal, the deal's not good enough for me. It's not good enough for the conference. It's not what we need to justify staying here. And you and I both know the second Oregon and Washington can leave, they're going to leave. They're going to be out. They'll say, sayonara, see you later. So there's no time on Kliavkoff's side. Despite what he says, time is not his friend. And he goes on to say, the longer we wait, the better this is, because we'll have other options. Media's changing rapidly, he says here. There's a shift in the media markets. Yes, there is a shift in the media markets. And with each passing day, that's not good for the Pac-12. We're not at the point where Amazon, we're not at the point where Apple TV can take a huge chunk of, an entire conference and make that conference relevant on the national stage. That's what Brett Yormark realized. That may be the case by 2030. The world is changing so quickly that may be the case by 2030. But right now, it is still beneficial to with ESPN and Fox, CBS, NBC, whatever. it is beneficial. In 5 years, that may be different, but your Mark's talking about, this like 5 years is 5 months from now, and that's just not true. Amazon and the streaming services are not going to be in a position to make the Pac-12 relevant by carrying those games for a lengthy period of time. He's just wrong about that. He's misreading the media landscape, which he's done for the better part of 12 months at this point. He has no leverage. He's got teams that are threatening the bail privately and somewhat publicly. He's got TV networks that, for the most part, are full with inventory. Yeah, they take a couple of late night Pac-12 games, but they don't need them. They're not clamoring for them like he thinks they are. So what's his leverage? He has none. George Kliavkoff, the Pac-12 commissioner, has no leverage right now. And he's trying to spin this thing like he has some leverage, but he doesn't. And I understand why he doesn't want to admit it publicly, but the way he went out there and the way he talked to the media on Friday at Pac-12 Media Days was just, it was one of the worst performances of media I've ever seen. And compare that to Brett Yormark at Big 12 Media Days a couple of weeks ago. Dude gets up there with a couple of pieces of paper, rips through his notes, brags about the Big 12, what a great, 12 months it's been for this league with him at the helm. And it's like night and day. The media savviness between Brett Yormark and George Kliavkoff is night and day. And that's probably not even doing the difference justice. It's really not. Kliavkoff is talking in circles while Yormark is just bullish on this league, its future, what they've done in just not even 12 months technically of him being the commissioner. My goodness. And I know there's a lot of rumors and rumblings about what's going to happen here in the next few days. I mean, people are talking about, I'm seeing the Colorado and the UConn rumor. I don't have any commentary on it. I bring this show to you talking about what we know, the facts. Yes, we'll address reports from credible reporters, but not random Twitter accounts saying that, UConn and Colorado are going to be joining. Now, maybe, I don't know, maybe it happens. We've been waiting for months at this point, but I've got to have my standard be for this show. Either something we're hearing, I'm hearing, we're reporting, we're talking about, but I can't do it based on Twitter accounts I don't know when people don't put their names to those Twitter accounts. So I'm not going to address those rumors because to me, I need more credible folks than that or myself personally. And I have not heard that. I have not heard it. But I do think the more rumblings that come out about Colorado, and Colorado has been very vocal here in the last week, leading up to Pac-12 Media Days. Colorado was out there talking about how, we want to stay in this league. This is where we want to be. But to me, it's kind of like when a girl is about to dump you or vice versa. Well, honey, I want to stay with you. I loved our time together, but it's just not working out. We're just not where we want to be, where we need to be in this relationship. But I really wanted it to. I really want to stay together. It's like right before the breakup, you start whispering those sweet nothings. And then before you know it, the whole thing collapses. The whole thing falls apart. And I wonder if that kind of commentary by Colorado to the Denver Post last week, which the chancellor did make, he said their goal is to stay within the Pac-12. I wonder if that's kind of setting up the eventual dumping of the conference. That's what I wonder. I mean, it's hard to not think about that because when you look at the move that Colorado made, it has been as bad a move as they could possibly make. There's just no other way to spin that. It has not been a move that has worked out in any way for that program. I mean, it has been a brutal, brutal stretch for Colorado since they left. They should have never left. I understand why they left. I do. People ask, oh, they shouldn't, why did they leave? I understand why Colorado left. But Sam Bradshaw at Sikkim 365, if you haven't seen this, it's up on our Twitter page at Pete Mundo, at Heartland_CS. Colorado has lost nearly $70 million versus what Big 12 schools made since Colorado left in 2010. Colorado left less than a week before Fox and ESPN presented a good deal to the Big 12. And since then, Colorado has made $70 million less than what Big 12 schools on average made since the Buffaloes left in 2010. $70 million. That is unbelievable. Colorado should have never left. They did leave. It was a mistake. And now it is time for them to come home. It's just a matter of when. It's a matter of when and how they make it work and make it work well. I'm Pete Mundo, HeartlandCollegeSports.com. We cover the Big 12 Conference. We appreciate you being here on YouTube, on the podcast. Hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate you doing that. It helps us grow the show weeks before the football season starts. We're going to keep it up. Multiple videos and podcasts coming your way. I got Phil Steele coming up on the show here, so be sure to check that out in the next few days. You want to be subscribed so that way you don't miss it here at HeartlandCollegeSports.com. So appreciate you, and as always, hit a 5-star rating and leave a review on the podcast and iTunes. And send me a screenshot of your rating and review to Pete Mundo, M-U-N-D-O, at HeartlandCollegeSports.com, and I will get you hooked up with a free Heartland College Sports koozie. Before I let you go, I want to make you laugh. I want to make you laugh because Kyle Whittingham, head coach at Utah, Utah's been insane. They have just been a bunch of lunatics. Utah coach Kyle Whittingham claims the Pac-12 is, in his words, a great spot. That's from Kyle Whittingham at Utah. Now, I respect Kyle Whittingham and what he's done at Utah. But let's leave that guy to coaching football. If there's one place the Pac-12 is not right now, it's a great spot. But I know, Utah is so jealous of what's going on in the Big 12. Utah is so jealous that BYU is now in a power conference and is now going to be, competing in the Big 12, and they hate everything about it. They need the Pac-12 to survive. But Kyle Whittingham can say Utah's in a great spot all he wants. That doesn't mean anything. I can sit here and tell you I don't have gray hairs coming in the side of my head in my mid-30s, but I do. I can say I don't, but I do. I'm not going to lie to you about it. And Kyle Whittingham can lie all he wants about the spot the Pac-12 is in, but he's wrong. With that, I will see you guys very soon. Hit that subscribe button. We so appreciate you being here, and we'll talk to you soon. I'm Pete Mundo, HeartlandCollegeSports.com, covering the Big 12. Take care.